Today is a little bit of a storytelling video, and the story is my story. I think I'm going to put the title as Good Catholic Girl to Professional Psychic. Maybe, how does that happen? Something like that. So as that implies, I was raised very strictly Catholic by my parents in the Midwest. Went to church every Sunday, went to Catholic school, kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade. If my parents could have afforded to send me to Catholic high school, I'm sure that they would have. My dad worked at GM and my mom was a nurse. And things were very Catholic at my house. That's the best way I know how to say it. Those of you who have been raised Catholic, strict Catholic, I'm sure that you kind of get an idea there. I can remember when I was somewhere between the ages of probably 8 to 12, for whatever reason, I had pulled out a playing card deck, and I had the cards out. I was sitting on my bed with my legs crossed in front of me, and I had the cards out, and I was putting them down like 5 cards at a time. I remember trying to get answers from God about questions, and I had a certain way that certain things meant yes and certain things meant no. I don't remember exactly what that way was, so I was asking yes or no questions. I have no idea where I got the idea to do that. I hadn't seen anybody use tarot cards. I didn't know what tarot cards were. I had not seen any kind of cartomancy or anything. Like, I had not been exposed to any of that. In fact, I was raised to believe that if you went to see a psychic or a tarot reader, you were going to go straight to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Straight down the drain you went. So, I was never exposed to any of that. And so the closest I got to that actually was seeing the crystal ball for the guy that was in the movie The Wizard of Oz, which right now I can tell you I'm very jealous of that crystal ball. I wish I had one that big. So anyway, my dad, I remember, came in the room while I was looking at the cards this way, and it was the first time I had ever done it. And he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I told him. And he says, "Oh." And he shut the door and he walked away. And then a few minutes later, he came back, opened the door, poked his head in the room, and said, "Put those cards away. You don't need to be doing that. It's a nice sunny day. Go outside and play, and don't do that with those cards again anymore." And so I put them away. And I never did again. So that, when I think back, that was kind of an indicator way back when that I was fascinated by this idea of communicating with God, with something out there that's bigger than us, with the divine. And I was trying to find ways to do that that were a little different than what I was being taught at church, which was basically to pray and meditate. And my problem with prayer was I never heard any answers back. I wanted to hear answers back. So anyway, I didn't do that anymore. And I went through the rest of my life, and I was confirmed in a Catholic church, and I can remember before confirmation I had the question of, I don't know if I really believe in all these things that I'm supposed to believe in before I'm confirmed, or if I just know what all the answers are because I've been taught them for so long from being in Catholic school and having religion class every single day. So I made a deal with God. I said to God, I'm going to go through all the motions of the confirmation because my family is coming, even some of them from out of state, to see my confirmation. And if I tell people that I don't want to be confirmed or that I'm not sure about this, that's going to be more drama than I can handle from all of these grown-ups. So here's the deal between me and you, God. I'm not really getting confirmed, even though I'm saying everything like I am. And so that was the deal I made with God. That even though it looked like I was confirmed, I would not be. And so that's how I did it, because I didn't want to create the drama in my family by saying I have questions and I'm not sure I can do this. So became confirmed, grew up, moved out. Eventually I went into the military. I was in the Air Force. And life had changed a lot by then. I wasn't going to church every Sunday. I didn't really feel like I belonged in the Catholic Church. I didn't feel like a Catholic. Every night before I would go to sleep, I would pray and I would ask God, if I'm supposed to be a Catholic, please help me to agree with the things that they teach. And if I'm not, please show me where I'm supposed to be. And that went on for a couple of years. And eventually I got married, another military guy, and we started going to church after a while. And we started out at a Methodist church. I think that's how he grew up, going to Methodist. And then somebody invited him to a Pentecostal church, and so he went to that. And then he told me, you have got to come and see this. And this was a Pentecostal church that happened to be in revival, and it was a huge church, like a couple of thousand members, I think, so massive. And these people, whenever they praised, they did things I had never seen before in church. They danced in church. We would have considered that totally disrespectful to God in the churches that I grew up in. And, they were a Pentecostal, full-blown Pentecostal church in revival, very active. Lots of miracles were happening in that church, and we ended up going to that church for quite a while. And I really started, that was where I really started believing that the Holy Spirit was alive and well and active. And during that time, I was still doing a lot of talking to God, but I wasn't using cards anymore. During that time, I started to hear Him respond to me. I didn't know that that was basically clairaudience. I had never become familiar with anything to do with psychic stuff at all. I was told that I had the gift of prophecy because of some of the things that I was saying. I was getting messages from Spirit to pass along to people. And then our lives completely changed, and we quit going to that church because my husband at that time and I went on the road in a semi, and so we were not home very often for Sunday services or services on any day, really. And so there was a long period where I didn't go to church anymore. And then eventually he and I got back into a lifestyle that was not on the road. He had a government job and I had a phone company job, and things were pretty stable, and we started going back to a Methodist church. This time we lived in a completely different state than before. So it was a different church, but we went to a Methodist church, and I really liked that church. They were good people there and very supportive, and it was just a good sense of family there. Everybody pulled together for each other really well. And then I found out he was cheating on me, and we got a divorce. And after that, even though, like, technically I wouldn't have been considered to do anything wrong to get a divorce from somebody who was cheating on me, it's still, being at church still didn't feel good anymore. And so I just quit. I went a few more times, and then after that I quit going to church. And so a few years went by, and I ended up getting married to another man who actually had been at one point a Baptist preacher, but had really fallen off the path, heavy duty, by the time I met him. And even though he said he was trying to get his life right with God, the evidence that showed up throughout our short marriage definitely said otherwise. And so that did not end well at all. And then it wasn't too long after that, maybe a year or two, that I met somebody else. And we never actually got married, but I did move to be in the town where he lived. He was over 800 miles away. So that's when I moved to Colorado. I still wasn't going to church at that time, but this guy was pretty wise, pretty smart, and we had some really deep philosophical discussions over our relationship. But he passed away 1 week before what would have been basically our anniversary. His name was Scott. When Scott passed away, I wasn't ready for that. There was too much unfinished business, too many things that we wanted to do, too many things that we had talked about doing and hadn't had a chance to. And I can remember the day that he passed away, I was on the computer looking at something that he and I had used to look at together and talk about. And this was a newer, more updated version of one of those things. And I said out loud, I wonder what you would think about this if you could see it right now. And then in my head, I heard this answer. It was like a 4-sentence answer, and none of those thoughts were my thoughts. And I knew something was up. I knew something was up. And I thought, oh, am I hearing from Scott? I can't be hearing from Scott. Is that a demon that's trying to impersonate Scott? Because that's the kind of thing that you hear growing up in the Catholic Church. Like if you're hearing from the dead, it's not really the dead. It's a demon trying to throw you off track. And so I really questioned that. And finally, I just thought, well, maybe it's just because I'm not ready to say goodbye or let go yet. So now I'm just imagining a conversation with him as a coping mechanism, basically. And so anyway, that happened. And as time went on, I continued talking to him and hearing from him more and more and more and more and more. And when I went to my grief counselor, I think it was the second time that I went to see her, I said, I'm really concerned about me. And she says, why? And I said, well, because I'm talking to Scott more now that he's dead than I did when he was alive. I don't think that can be good. And she was very calm about it. She just said, well, sometimes if we're not ready to let somebody go, then it seems like they're around for a while, and that's okay. And whenever you're ready to let go of them, then they're just not there anymore. And that's kind of normal. She said usually it's around 3 months-ish. And so my takeaway from that was, all right, well, that means I am insane, but it's temporary, so it's okay. And so I walked around really thinking that that's what was going on, that I really hadn't been able to say goodbye. And then at 5 months out from his death, I heard from another spirit who had already crossed over. And I sat up pretty straight when that happened. And I just thought, this is definitely not what my grief counselor was talking about. So I really thought, okay, I'm crazy. I've lost it. I'm crazy. Or there is really some kind of spiritual communication happening here, but I was leaning towards I'm crazy. But I did start to do research. I started to go to the library and I was pulling out every book I could find that was written by mediums and just poring over their words and trying to understand what was happening to me and trying to figure out if what was happening to me was anything like what happened to them. And so I was reading one of John Edwards' books, and it said something about, to explore your psychic abilities or to practice your psychic abilities. I don't remember exactly. He talked about getting a deck of tarot cards, and he also talked about going to a spiritual circle or a psychic circle. So I found a gathering on Meetup, and I went, And the night that I went, the facilitator of that gathering had decided that the group was going to do billets. So if you don't know what billets are, they're where you write down a question and you stick it in an envelope and you seal up the envelope. And then you give that envelope to your psychic person, and it's their job to answer that question for you without ever opening the envelope or holding it up to the light or anything else to cheat. So everybody wrote a question, stuck it in the envelope, sealed the envelope. Our envelopes all had numbers, and then she shuffled them around and made sure that none of us got our envelope back and that none of us knew whose envelope we had. And so there was 5 of us there. There was 2 of us that had never done anything like this before, and then 3 who had been doing this stuff for 4 or 5 years, just messing around with it at an amateur level. And what we were supposed to do is we all got yellow legal pads given to us with pens, and we were told to write down everything that we could sense about the person who wrote our question in the envelope that we had. And then after a few minutes, we were told to write down the answer to the question. And then the facilitator gave us ideas about what to find out about the person that we had their envelope, like what do they look like? Who is it? What's their name? You know, like, do we know who it is in the room? Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? Do they wear glasses? Stuff like that. So I knew, I was actually the only one in that group that I knew whose envelope that I had. And the details that I looked into and found out about her life they matched up perfectly. And when it came time to answer the question, the answer made total and complete sense, and you could have pushed me out of my chair with a feather, because I really went to that as a test to see, was I crazy, or was there really spiritual communication going on? And I remember driving home that night, hands on 10 and 2. I had the exact moment like impressed in my mind, and I just remember having the thought of, I'm not crazy. I'm psychic. Now what? And from that point, there was 2 weeks where I just questioned, how come I don't remember making a deal with the devil? Because I had always been taught that if somebody was psychic, they were getting their information from the devil. And I just couldn't understand, like, wouldn't I remember a transaction like that? Doesn't seem forgettable to me. And I really, for 2 weeks, I just kind of thought, oh, I'm going to hell. And I don't even remember making the deal. And finally, at the end of 2 weeks, I had sort of an aha moment where I just kind of went, wait a second, I'm not a bad person. And the person that I've been communicating with that's on the other side, they weren't a bad person. So maybe those people that taught me all these things about being psychic, maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were very sincere, but maybe they were very sincerely wrong. And so that was the end of me worrying about going to hell or not remembering any deal with the devil. Because I knew I would remember that. I hadn't made a deal with the devil. I'm not going to hell. And I truly believe that what I do, when I'm doing it, not everybody communicates with the same people that I do, but I believe that I'm communicating with the divine. With God, if you will. With Sacred Spirit, Holy Spirit. So, yeah, I don't think the Catholic Church would be too thrilled with me at this point in my life, but I do believe that the communication I have, that the work that I do, is straight up communication with God. And I don't feel like that's going to lead me to go to hell at all. And in fact, I feel like it's a gift that I have to share with other people around me who need to have some clarity on situations. So that's my story. That's how a good Catholic girl becomes psychic. Thanks for listening.